something just happened in the Iran crisis that could make this entire conflict even more dangerous. Donald Trump publicly warned that Iran's next supreme leader would not last long without US approval. That alone would have been explosive. But what happened next made it far more serious. Iran's clerical leadership moved forward anyway, and on March 9, 2026, state media announced that Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had been chosen as the new supreme leader. So now the world is looking at a moment where Washington is issuing open pressure, Tehran is signaling defiance, and the succession at the top of Iran is no longer just an internal matter. It has become part of a live regional confrontation. And that is where this story stops being a headline and starts looking like a major turning point. To understand why this is so dramatic, you have to look at the sequence. Ali Khamenei, who had led Iran since 1989, was killed in the opening phase of the current US-Israeli assault on Iran, according to Reuters and AP reporting. That immediately triggered one of the most sensitive political questions in the entire Middle East: who would replace him, and how quickly could Iran stabilize its chain of command? The Assembly of Experts, an 88-member clerical body tasked with choosing the supreme leader, moved under wartime pressure and ultimately selected Mojtaba. Reuters says the position gives him the final say in all matters of state, which means this was never just ceremonial. The successor would shape military strategy, domestic repression, regional alliances, and the future of Iran's nuclear posture. That is exactly why Trump's comments landed with so much force. But here is where the tension jumped again. Trump did not make just one comment. Days earlier, in a Reuters interview published March 5, he said the United States would have to be involved in choosing Iran's next leader. Then, in remarks reported by ABC News on March 8, he sharpened that position and said the incoming leader would have to get approval from the US or he was not going to last long. That is an extraordinary statement, especially because it came while Iranian clerics were still preparing to make their decision. In other words, this was not a reaction after the fact. It was pressure before the final move. And once Iran chose Mojtaba anyway, the choice itself started to look like a direct answer to Washington. Not a compromise, not a pause, a signal. What makes Mojtaba Khamenei such a controversial figure is that he has operated for years as a powerful insider without ever becoming a visible national leader. Reuters describes him as a mid-ranking cleric with strong ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and influence inside the vast networks that grew around his father's office. He has never held a formal government position, and his role has long triggered criticism from those inside Iran who reject anything that looks like dynastic succession in a system born from a revolution against monarchy. Reuters also notes that the US Treasury sanctioned him in 20... So when Trump talks about Iran's new leader, he is not talking about an unknown figure. He is talking about someone many in Washington already view as deeply embedded in the hardline system. But the biggest message may be what Mojtaba's appointment says about Iran itself. Reuters reported that Iranian state media said the armed forces leadership pledged allegiance to him, and the Revolutionary Guard said they were ready to follow the new supreme leader. Analysts quoted by Reuters said the choice pointed to confrontation over compromise and showed that hardliners remained firmly in control. That matters because there had been speculation that the shock of Ali Khamenei's death might create space for a softer figure, or at least a more cautious transition. Instead, Tehran chose a successor widely seen as close to the security establishment. Critics argue this makes the succession look dynastic. Supporters see it as wartime continuity. Either way, the signal is unmistakable. The system did not bend under pressure. It closed ranks. And that raises the stakes for everyone watching this conflict from outside Iran. Then came another warning that pushed the situation even closer to the edge. Before the appointment was announced, the Israeli military said it would pursue every successor to Ali Khamenei and even warned those involved in selecting the next leader. That means the succession process itself was being treated like a military target. So when Trump said the new leader would not survive long without US approval, and Israel warned that every successor could be pursued, the message from Iran's adversaries was impossible to miss. But instead of stepping back, Tehran moved forward. And that is why this story feels less like rhetoric and more like the beginning of a new phase. The wider fallout is already visible. Reuters reported that oil climbed above $100 a barrel as the war expanded and the leadership transition unfolded. The US State Department ordered non-emergency government employees and family members to leave Saudi Arabia because of safety risks, and Reuters also reported a drone attack near Riyadh's diplomatic quarter that Saudi defenses said they intercepted. Saudi Arabia has separately said it will take all necessary measures to protect its security and territory. That means this is no longer a crisis contained inside Iran and Israel. The entire Gulf is feeling the pressure. Energy markets are reacting. Diplomatic footprints are shrinking, and every new statement from Washington, Tehran, or Jerusalem now has immediate consequences far beyond the original battlefield. That is what makes Trump's words so important. They are landing in a region that is already stretched to the limit. And there is one more layer people should not ignore. Reuters, reporting on Mujadaba, says he is backed by powerful elements inside the Revolutionary Guards, but he is also untested, junior to many senior clerics, and controversial because of the perception of hereditary rule. Some analysts suggest that this combination could make controversial because of the perception of hereditary rule. Some analysts suggest that this combination could make him both dependent on hardline security structures and more likely to govern in a rigid way, at least early on. Others argue that simply surviving this opening period will be his first real test. That uncertainty matters because Trump is not just talking about a rival state. He is talking about a leadership transition happening in real time in a government under bombardment, with regional militias, Gulf monarchies, Israel, and the United States all reacting at once. The result is a moment where symbolism and military risk are colliding at the very top of the Iranian system. So the real story here is bigger than one provocative Trump quote. Yes, the phrase was dramatic. Yes, it instantly grabbed headlines. But the deeper issue is that Iran went ahead and chose Mujadaba Khamenei anyway, despite public US pressure and explicit Israeli threats. That suggests the succession was designed to project resilience, not flexibility. It also means any future move by Washington will now be judged against Trump's own words. If the new leadership consolidates power, Trump looks challenged. If the pressure campaign intensifies, the region could be pulled even deeper into open escalation. And with Trump also telling Reuters that ending the war would be a mutual decision with Benjamin Netanyahu, it is becoming harder to argue that this is a limited confrontation. The next few days could reveal whether this warning was political theater or the opening signal of an even more dangerous showdown.